So, where were we? The Darkstream, VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic News. First of all, thanks for those of you who tuned in already previously tonight. Sorry about the interruption, but I noticed that a lot of you put it to good use because there's over 100 more people signed up for the Castelia Book Club than when we started it. So that's great. What that's going to let us do is let more people know when our books are coming out. It's going to also help us push the books, not just the books that belong to us, but also we're going to be pushing the books of a number of independent authors that we support. Some of them are authors that we might publish one of their books, whereas they self-publish others. Some of them are books where we only publish maybe the audiobooks or the print books, whereas they publish the ebooks. And then there's others where we don't have any publishing relationship with them at all, but we are allied with them against the mainstream publishing world. We think that it's very important for independent publishers and independent authors to support each other. And one of the most important things that we can do is provide exposure. Because one of the main reasons that one book sells 20 times more than another has nothing to do with how good the book is or even how much people like one book versus the other, but simple exposure. There are a lot of great authors that people simply do not know. My own books, most people who read them rapidly reach the conclusion that they're better than George Martin's epic fantasy. They actually get compared unfavorably, I admit. But most people think that they fit somewhere quality and entertainment-wise, somewhere in between A Song of Ice and Fire and Lord of the Rings. Now that probably sounds absolutely insane if you haven't read them. But if you haven't read them, what does your opinion matter? It doesn't. So, A Sea of Skulls, I'm going to get, SJW is always double down on first, and then A Sea of Skulls will be out probably in November, December time frame, complete with the print edition. It takes a while, but that's if you want to write 850-page books or read them, it takes a while. So, and of course, as you know, I'm quite busy editing everybody else's books. And so we've got a lot of books coming out this year, and a lot of important books. And we just recently it's always funny. Did I review Awaken the Nightland? I wrote about it a little bit, but I don't think that I reviewed it per se. I highly, highly recommend Awaken the Nightland. It is a great book. Apparently Skype tries to interrupt things. Who knew? So watch out, it's probably going to do it again. What's the most difficult aspect of publishing? I think it's finding the right authors, because it's not just about signing the best authors you possibly can. You also need to find authors that sell. You need both. And so editing good authors can be difficult. I've been very fortunate in that we've got really good working relations with everyone from John C. Wright to Martin Van Crevel. As I've said before, it's very humbling working with John C. Wright because he is one of the greatest wordsmiths of our time, and he's fast. And so it's, for someone like me who's much more of a plodder in every sense of the writing term, it can be a little disheartening to see how fast he turns out stuff that is better than what I do. And we have different perspectives on certain things, and so sometimes I'll roll my eyes a little bit at something that he's written, or sometimes he'll push back a little bit at a correction that I suggest. But that's where mutual respect comes in, and that's where it's important. You need to be able to work with people that you don't necessarily agree with all the time. To give you an indication of what a broad spectrum Castelia actually offers, our next book is going to be by Martin Van Creveld. Martin is no conservative at all, but he's also the brilliant author of The Concept of Non-Trinitarian War, which is one of the most important military concepts that has been created since Clausewitz, really. And so, when you're dealing with a genius in his own subject, you don't really worry about, whether he agrees on your preference for the U.S. president or whatever. To the last two people that we have offered book contracts to, one is Tara McCarthy. She's a white nationalist, or I should say more of an ethno-nationalist rather than a white nationalist per se. She's omni-nationalist on the one side, so she's pretty right-wing. And then we also offered a book contract to Steve Keen, the greatest living economist, who happens to be, if I recall correctly, an Australian Labour Party supporter. So he's reasonably far left. We don't care because we're not publishing. I'm no more interested in Tara's opinion on economics than I am in Steve's opinion on U.S. politics. We publish books. We don't police authors. And so, I'm not going to publish a book that I think is stupid. I'm not going to publish a book that I think is evil, and I'm not going to publish a book that I think is just flat out wrong. That's my call as the lead editor. But, if somebody can make a great case, if they can make a compelling case that's interesting to read, I want to publish them, and I don't care who they are, really. And that's something that people have a tough time sometimes getting their heads around. They look at me and they're like, VoxDay, you're that evil, alt-right, racist, bigot, bad person who engages in crime think. Maybe. But what does that have to do with how good The Missionaries is? The Missionaries is brilliant. The Missionaries is one of the best books published in the last 5 years. As a female, what does Tara have to offer regarding politics and philosophy? Well, she's got quite a bit. She's an intelligent woman. And, more importantly, if nationalists are going to win, then we need to figure out how to appeal to women. And who better to be able to explain the nationalist case to women than an intelligent woman? We have no problem whatsoever publishing women. Sarah Salviander, she wrote she's the astrophysicist who wrote our textbook on astronomy, and she is working on more of our textbooks, physics, and she's also working on some apologetics. And so it would be foolish to not actively pursue great female writers. Some of my favorite novelists are women. Susan Cooper, Madeleine L'Engle, great authors. Ellis Peters, you know. I would absolutely love to discover female authors like that. Publish them in a heartbeat. Would I publish David Duke? No, I wouldn't publish David Duke. I think that he's a media whore, and I don't think much. I don't think much of his analytics. Yeah, Tanith Lee is fantastic. Love Tanith Lee. Her Secret Books of Paradise are absolutely fantastic. If you haven't read them, you really should. They're very dark, but we're not interested in. Yes, obviously we tend to lean to the right. No, I wouldn't publish Richard Spencer because Richard Spencer doesn't write anything. He mostly edits. He likes to go around getting. He's an editor, not really a writer. So we're not afraid to publish anybody, but we have exacting standards. We publish John Wright. We publish Martin Van Creveld. We're talking to Steve Keen. I'm the best-selling political philosopher alive the last 3 years. Okay? So, just because somebody happens to, embrace a few of the similar positions to me, that means nothing. It means absolutely nothing to me as an editor. You've got to be good. These are the books that we're giving away if you haven't signed up yet. The books we're giving away are The Missionaries, ebooks, I should hasten to point out. The Missionaries is absolutely brilliant. This is the fastest I've ever signed a book submission. It is about these arrogant UN NGOs, and they are there to guide this island in Papua New Guinea through to independence. And let's just say look, I'm not interested in talking about every alt-right person you know, okay? Just drop it. If they already have a publisher, why would I have any interest in them? Okay? For crying out loud. So The Missionaries, Owen Stanley is fantastic. And then the other one this is actually the cover for Volume 2. I liked it better than the cover for Volume 1. There Will Be War Volume 1. This is the classic 1980s military science fiction anthology. Jerry Pornell and I revived it last year with There Will Be War Volume 10. But we're giving away the first one, There Will Be War Volume 1, which is excellent. Personally, I think the very best in the series is Volume 2. And I was very pleased that some of the readers actually put Volume 10 at number 3. So I think we did a good job there. I really would like to get working on Volume 11, but we're busy these days. Anyhow, so if you haven't signed up for the book club yet, you can go to voxday.blogspot.com, sign up for it. On Monday, we're going to be sending out the ebooks. So basically, you've got all weekend for people to sign up. I'm going to remind people tomorrow. I'm going to remind people on Sunday. Already we've seen, I think, 400 or 500 people sign up total, just today. And so the ebooks will go out on Monday. Also, if you use Kindle, we usually send out, or we always send out EPUBs, but they're DRM free. So if you use Kindle, go and download a program called Calibre. It's something you should have anyhow because it lets you, change stuff into other formats, which is very, very useful. Anyhow, it's free. We'll have the information on the email, but you can then convert the EPUB into a Mobi or AZW, both of which Kindle uses. So, But there's more to it. What we're going to be doing, I'll get to the comics in a minute. What we're going to be doing with book club is I'm going to be doing probably once or twice a month. I'll be doing book club here on Periscope. And I will be talking about books that I like, books that I've read recently, maybe books that I've read a long time ago, but I'll be talking about specific books. Then I'm also going to be doing, probably on Gab TV, I'm going to be doing author interviews, which is also going to be part of the book club. And so, Periscope doesn't permit you to do two-way. Gab TV does. And so we're going to be doing some of that. So that's the idea. It's more than, it's not about just, I'm not just going to be doing it to talk about Castelia books. I mean, yes, we want to sell our books. Yes, we need to sell our books. That's what keeps the engine running. But, I just like to talk about books. I like to read them. Terence McKenna. I've read a bit of Terence McKenna back in my Mondo 2000 days. My favorite Terence McKenna story. You have to keep in mind, Terence McKenna was one of those, take drugs to expand your mind and open your mind and reach new dimensions and that sort of thing. And I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but apparently there was a particular drug that he had. It's one of those new designer drugs at the time. This is in the late 90s. Actually, it would have been, it was the early 90s. And this is back in my Psychosonic days. Our lead singer, Paul Sebastian, was hugely into Mondo 2000 and Terence McKenna. And so, anyhow, there was a conference, and McKenna started talking about how if you took this drug, it would open up a dimension to another universe where there were these elves who were very wise and would share their wisdom with you and that sort of thing. And the next guy got up to speak and said, that's just an amazing analogy, and it's really, it's such a brilliant metaphor for this. And McKenna leaps up and pounds his fist on the table and says, "It's not a metaphor! The elves are real!" And suddenly, this huge, not huge, but everybody in the room suddenly realizes McKenna's not a brilliant philosopher. He's out of his mind on drugs. So, anyhow, I have no idea whether that's true, and I frankly don't care. If it's not, I don't wanna know. I like living in a world where someone is pounding the table and screaming that the elves are real. So, anyhow, sorry for the digression, but that's about the extent of my knowledge of Terence McKenna. It was kind of funny because people listen to the Psychosonic CD, and they say there's it's a little bit trippy. There's a lot of hallucinogenic references and that sort of thing. It's like, it was the early 90s. We were into the whole cyberpunk drug mind expansion thing. That was our interest, basically. Technology, psychotropic drugs, and girls. And an amount of politics, I guess, but that was pretty much me. The other guys didn't give a damn. It was always kind of funny trying to explain the lyrics to my bandmates, because they were kind of like, "What's this all about?" And I'd start explaining, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't care." just so it rhymes. Anyhow, but yeah, that's how you end up. That's how you end up with songs like "Rhythm of the Rage" and "I Am God." Sufficiently copious pharmaceuticals. But anyhow, Back to the book club stuff. You know, what we want to do is we want to capitalize and ride this momentum that technology has opened for independent publishers. It's not going to be that way forever. And so we need to take advantage of it and build institutions and organizations and alliances and careers while we can. We don't know when Amazon is going to shut down the whole gravy train. You know, Amazon's pretty converged. You know, they still like to do business, but there's no guarantees. You know, do you remember that Amazon shut down all the sales of stuff with Confederate flags on it? So, you know, there's this constant push and pull within a converged company between people that just want the company to stay in business and people that want to turn it into a converged institution for thought policing. And so, you know, we've already run into situations. Fortunately, you know, we know people in Amazon that we're able to contact and get things straightened out when some SJW inside Amazon decides that they're going to try to make life difficult for us or our authors or whatever. So that's why we have the Castalia House bookstore set up. You know, you can buy a lot of our books there directly. That's why we work with some of the other people too. You know, but I mean, honestly, right now Amazon is the absolutely dominant force for ebooks. Print's a little different. You know, about a third of our sales are print. I have gotten some good submissions on the Gen X, on the World We Have Lost. Somebody asked about a minimum submission. 60,000 words is probably our minimum. But don't be in a hurry to submit. You're competing with very, very, very good and established authors for the most part. You know, we're a small company. So, you know, don't just dash something off, show it to your mommy. You know, she tells you it's the greatest thing ever. Well, I mean, I can pretty much guarantee you there's not a chance in hell that we're going to publish it, because, you know, I think it was Ernest Hemingway had a saying that everybody has a million words of crap in them. You want to get it all out before you can start writing anything worthwhile. Most new authors spend way too much time trying to sell their first story or trying to sell their first, you know, partial novel or whatever, rather than just writing. What you want to do is write and write and write some more. You know, I got published relatively early in my writing, and it was probably not good for me. You know, if you read my older stuff, if you read Rebel Moon, if you read The War in Heaven, you know, I don't really, you know, my stuff doesn't really become what I would consider to be decent until The World in Shadow. By Wrath of Angels, you can see the improvements pretty clear, and then of course, you know, my current stuff is generally considered much better. I mean, I'm never going to be a flowery wordsmith like Tanith Lee or Edgar Allan Poe or John Wright, but you know. So anyhow, you know, and also look for people that will really rip your stuff to shreds. You do not want people that are going to pat you on the back. They're not going to help you get better. You know, what P.G. Wodehouse did, and this is one of the few advantages of the old style of writing on typewriters and stuff, he used to go around and post all the stuff that he had done, every page, and he would tape it to the wall. And if it was at the level he felt was good enough, he would have it at one level. If he thought it was particularly good, he would tape it up higher. And if it wasn't if the page wasn't good enough, he would tape it lower, and then he would go around and collect the pages that were lower, and keeping the story within the parameters of that one page, he would attempt to amp it up and make it better. And that's why P.G. Woodhouse's stuff is so, the quality is of such a high level throughout. It just doesn't really flag. The energy never flags. There's always something going on and happening, holding your interest because of that method. Now, I'm not about to do that. I don't even have room for 854 pages of A Sea of Skulls in my office, so that's not happening. But you get the concept. So, anyhow, to those of you who are already Castelli readers, thank you so much for your support. You guys are the ones who make that happen. How can we submit? Write it up and email it to voxday@gmail.com. I'm the one who will look at them. Ian Banks is interesting. He's a very good writer. He was philosophically a nihilist. He wrote the most unattractive, nasty, disgusting book I think I've ever read. I disliked it intensely, The Wasp Factory. You can read a debate between me and an SJW who thinks it is a great book. Phil Sandefur or something like that. You can find that on my site and read it, and you can see why I disliked it so much. I'm just finishing a book right now. I'm gonna do a book club on it at some point in time. Jerusalem by Alan Moore. And it's fascinating. It's very, very well researched. It is way too long. It desperately needs editing down to about a third the length. And it's got the same thing that Ian Banks has, which is the idea that if you wallow in filth, then that somehow makes you more realistic or something, or makes it more literature. I'm going to have to do a count on it. I'm betting that there are at least 30 references to either dog shit or human shit in the book Jerusalem. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And so I think that it tends to illustrate their own philosophical, psychological tendency to wallow in mental filth. I mean, we all have our darkness. We all have our temptations that we give into. I wouldn't say his science fiction is great. I actually prefer his literature. One of the things that Ian Banks kind of wrote himself into a corner is that he postulated the culture, and then he promptly had to take you out of the culture because nothing ever happens in the culture. The culture is so intrinsically boring that you essentially need to introduce external forces to it because nothing interesting ever happens there. It's rather like Star Trek in that regard. So I find that interesting to think about. I don't actually find those books terribly interesting to read. Yes, I did mention The Wasp Factory in an earlier Periscope. About the comics, we are going to be doing a Kickstarter. We are going to be, we've actually got a number of panels done for the one set of stories. We've got another set of panels done for the second set of stories. I'd like to find one more comic artist before we launch the Kickstarter, but we'll have to see. We may also, I'm not sure we want to do it on Kickstarter. We may do it on Indiegogo instead, simply because Kickstarter is quite a bit more converged than Indiegogo. So it's one of those questions where, you know, do you even want to try to run a campaign when you suspect that they're going to, you know, the converged company is going to interrupt and get and shut you down. If you're a comics artist, email a sample to VoxDay@gmail.com. So there's a lot of people who do art. We've looked at a lot of different ones. There's a couple of people that are creating stuff for this. You know, PAX is doing crowd or whatever it's called, counterfund or something. There's another group or two that are doing Kickstarter replacements, but you know, I'm too busy with Castalia and Alpenwolf and Infogalactic to take on a fourth project like that. Not really an interest of mine. And other people are already doing it. Yeah, I had my doubts about Star Citizen early on. Chris and I actually talked about my designing, taking my AI system and using it for the wingmen there, but I decided not to. Red Meat's good, but no, it's not that he's not the right style. The stuff that he does is it's you know, the political cartoon style is not the style we're using. This is superhero stuff. The comic that we're talking about is alt hero, and so we've got you know, a whole set of superheroes, whole backstory, all this kind of stuff. We'll get into that, but yes, I've read plenty of stuff on AI. I'm not going to talk about game design AI right now. That's a long topic. But yeah, I've seen the new panels, and they're looking really good. Very happy with the Dynamique story and Capitan Europa, and also the Michael Martel story. So it's all looking good. Yes, my desk is actually shockingly clean. So doing okay there. For books on nationalism, I would recommend first my own Cuckservative. And I'm trying to think what would be, you know, Terrors is going to be good, but it's not out yet. You know, probably one of Greg Johnson's books. I would have a look at his stuff. I'm not sure which one to recommend, but you know, he's done a fair amount of work on nationalism and white nationalism in particular. But really, Cuckservative is a place you need to start. So, and then you know, and then Kevin McDonald's stuff is pretty good too, if you can find something that's, you know, focused on that. Anyhow, thanks for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you soon, and have a good weekend.